everybody, it's the interview queen Alicia Toot here, and you are currently listening to and obviously enjoying Queen's Court.
Hi, I'm the Asian sensation Kanji. You're listening to Queen's Court.
Hi guys, this is the Queen of Queens Visage talking, and I am so happy to introduce you to the Queen's Court.
All right, everyone, welcome to this episode of Queenie Chats on Queen's Court with your girl, the Queen of Any. And I'm so excited to welcome the most marketable man, Mr. Richard Holliday. Hello, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm doing the best that I can in my state of rarefied air quarantine. But here we are in the midst of this global pandemic. But I guess I can say I'm doing the best that I can.
Oh, man, I totally understand that. And, you know, where I'm from, in good old Connecticut here, we're about to be on our own set of stay-at-home, shelter-in-place kind of thing. So it's getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, Connecticut seems to be one of those states that is a little behind the curve in the sense that we kind of follow suit to what New York does. So hopefully we can eliminate most of the growth of this virus, you know, the best that we can.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that we can as well. But being that this is such an unprecedented time, how are you spending your slow quarantine here? What have you been up to?
Well, I am certainly doing things that I don't really find myself doing all quite often, which would be watching a lot of television and movies. That seems to help pass the time minimally. Then I actually went out and purchased a PS4. I do not play video games. I don't find them really all that fun. However, you know, I haven't played them since I was a teenager. But I went out and bought one of those to just knock off a few hours a day. Other than that, I'm drinking a lot of coffee. I'm still doing a lot of workouts. I find myself running a lot. And going down by the water and trying to just stare at the ocean and pretend like nothing's happening. And that's all I'm doing.
Well,
sure you're doing probably a lot of the same.
A lot of the same, yeah. I mean, I play video games, but I will say that not as often, but now it's a lot. So I totally understand where you're coming from there. But let's spend a little time talking all about you and see if we can distract ourselves, rather, from all this craziness. So first question for you from me is, what was it about the wrestling profession that captivated your attention, that made it for you to say, wow, like, I really want to do this myself?
Well, I think it's just like anything else. I think anybody who ever attends their first event kind of gets hooked. If you're meant to be in the business, you kind of get hooked off that first time you go. And I remember my father bringing me to the New Haven Coliseum, which is no longer in existence, but I would go there. And this is when, WWF, Raw or SmackDown would come through. And I would go to that. And I would, I'm a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, and I'm enamored by this. So I think then, maybe the seed was planted. I don't think any 5-year-old kid decides their career right then and there. And then I think it was probably around 22, if I'm being in all honesty. Everybody knew who I grew up with, in my adolescence and into my teenage years knows I wanted to be a professional wrestler, but, how serious was that dialogue? I'm not so sure. But around 22, when I was playing football in college, I took a look at myself in the mirror one day and I just said, well, I'm not going to play professional football, nor do I have any desire to. Professional wrestling is what I've always wanted to do. So now it's time to just, dive in head first and go for this. So that's kind of the way it happened for me.
Yeah, that seems it's a similar story. I feel like a lot of other people that I've spoken with that, it's something that happens when you're a kid and you just kind of see it. And sometimes it's not a journey that happens, right away, that this is the choice I'm going to start doing, right? As soon as I'm a teenager, like, it's going to happen and I'm moving forward. Some people find out a little later, but 22 is a great time to start. Now, when it comes to being the most marketable man, I have a question here from someone on Twitter. His name is BJ from Ozzolution. And he wanted to know, what does it take to make somebody the most marketable?
Well, it's an interesting question, not one that I haven't been asked before. And it's really just it's an understanding that this is a consumer-driven industry, and it's an understanding of the marketplace in which professional wrestling falls into. So what does it really take in order to be successful in professional wrestling? Well, there's several different attributes that I think are necessary and that I think are a requirement, a prerequisite, if I may say, in order to be successful in pro wrestling. Now, there are outliers, of course, as there are with anything else in life, but it's charisma. You know, I don't want to just boast about myself here, but it's you have to be. It's a presence. It's a charisma. It's that it factor. It's looks. It's the way you carry yourself. It's the way that you present yourself. The overall presentation of your character and yourself. So I've always believed that was me. I never thought that there was anybody else in professional wrestling that had all the intangible and tangible qualities that I possess. I also, partner that with the fact that I have extraordinary articulation skills, and I also have a degree in marketing. So now I understand marketing, and now all pro wrestling is marketing at its grassroots. If you strip it down, that's all it really is. So I have an understanding in marketing. I translated that into my knowledge of professional wrestling, and snap your fingers, here's the most marketable man.
Yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense. And you can tell definitely that, you're very articulate and well-spoken. And that I feel like has a lot to do with some of the best qualities, at least how I feel when I'm watching professional wrestling, or I'm trying to get into maybe a person I haven't seen before, and I'm trying to understand them a little more. If they can speak really well and they can captivate me on the mic, then I'm automatically more like, okay, what do you have to offer? Let me see you. Let me see what's going to happen. And I feel like that's how you build fan base in a lot of ways.
Well, of course. I mean, to me, I try to tell people all the time. I don't believe that a first-time consumer would ever go to a show and say, "Hey, do you remember that that wrestling combination that wrestler A exhibited in the ring? Like, oh my God, that really captivated me. I'll remember that little sequence for the rest of my life." No, you won't. You'll probably forget about it in 20 minutes. Wrestling is very secondary to me in the wrestling business. It's not something that I strive to, impress people with the way that or what I do within the ropes. Does that make sense? It's more of, I am trying to, well, I'm not trying. The way I present myself is exactly how I feel the wrestling business should be presented. And I just think that goes over a lot of people's heads, and I think that's why a lot of people don't find success, because they don't have any charisma or stage presence or articulation skills. Or they can't make people feel other emotions other than simply, wow, that was impressive.
Sure, yeah. You need to make a lasting impression more so than a moveset. I think you said that perfectly right there. And, for me, I believe that I saw you, as my memory is coming back. So many wrestling shows I've been to, but Northeast Wrestling. And I remember the AirPods, and I remember not really so much what you did in the ring, other than, you're very tall and strong and impressive that way. So, I remember the physique, right? But more so, I remember the wordplay that you had and the interactions with the audience, and their reactions back to you. I think that's what I remember the most.
Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, the AirPods was something that, once I started doing, it was an instant type of attraction towards the consumers. Mm-hmm. And it was something that kind of clicked almost immediately. So, and I'm a forward thinker. I'm one who, and like I said, it's just understanding the market. It's understanding what's not being used currently that should be being used. And I saw a massive opportunity with the AirPods, and boom, I struck gold with it. Now, if you were to talk to somebody about AirPods within wrestling, automatically it's going to be synonymous with Richard Holliday.
Sure. And as you combine all of your knowledge and your background from college and everything with what you're doing now, is there any other, perhaps someone that you watched or someone that you admire that was been a really big influence on what you're doing in your career right now?
Yeah, I think the easy answer would be The Rock, and I think that's because he used wrestling. He didn't use wrestling, but he allowed wrestling to be a platform to things that let him showcase his skills further than just a wrestling business. And I think that's really, really important. You know, it's pro wrestling first and foremost is my love and where I find the most happiness. However, I do understand that I could possibly be successful in other avenues of entertainment. And I see somebody like him, and I'm obviously very impressed with everything that he does. So I would say The Rock. And then if I had to give you an answer of somebody within the ring, it's always been Randy Orton in terms of who I would like to, if I had to emulate anybody. I try to emulate nobody, but if I had to, it would be him, because he's the type of wrestler that I admire. For what actually happens within the ring, it would be him.
Sure. Yeah, I can actually see that. It makes sense to me a little bit that would be someone you would pick. Another thing that I've been seeing with you, obviously, is working with MLW, and what a fantastic promotion that is. Can you speak to your experiences that you've had there?
Yeah, MLW is, in my opinion, I don't like saying a secret because I feel like a lot of people know about it, but it's the best kept secret in pro wrestling, and I think more eyes should be on it. The weekly programming that we're putting out on a weekly basis is really on par with everything else. I know a lot of people, a lot of consumers will say, well, it's the top two dogs. It's WWE and AEW, and while that may be true to an extent, I think if those consumers were to give MLW a chance, they would very easily wedge a third competitor into that market. For me, it's been the launching pad of my career. There were some things prior to me getting to MLW that allowed me to even catch the eye of Court Bauer and the team, but that is what really gave me the biggest platform in order to succeed. And my consumer base has grown immensely ever since I've been featured on MLW TV. And as you start watching more and more, you see that, well, I'm pretty heavily featured now, and that is because they saw the marketability and what I can do and the intangible qualities that I bring to an hour-long program. Keep in mind MLW is an hour long. It's not an hour-long show with commercials. That would bring it down to 42 minutes. There's an hour worth of programming every single time you watch it, even on beIN Sports. Even on TV. So they understand, and I think that's why you see me in so many different segments.
Yeah, that definitely helps in terms of yes, it's an hour, but you're not taking commercial breaks, and you can really just invest yourself for those 60 minutes into the product and into you guys, which I think is something unique and special that MLW offers. And I've had the pleasure of speaking with the interview queen herself, Miss Alicia Toot, and she can't say enough wonderful things about MLW, and I'm really glad that she is there as well.
Yeah, she's good. She
super
has a
fun.
Lot. She has a lot.
Yeah, for sure. It's been really cool to watch that, and I agree. I feel like a lot of people know about MLW, but I feel like more people should tune in and watch, because it's a fantastic thing that you guys are putting out every week. And from the tweet that I put out from Conrad, Everything Pro Wrestling, I wanted to know, what's your next goal with MLW? You've had a lot of things going on, but what are you looking to do next once everything, obviously begins again? What is Most Marketable Man up to?
Well, I obviously have a lot on my plate in terms of, heading the dynasty into a new direction, and obviously being the Caribbean champion and bringing a lot of prestige into that. But there's so many things that I can do within the confines of MLW, and there's so many avenues of success that I'm really looking towards. I can't say that there's one in specific that makes me more excited than another. However, there are certain championships that I feel would look especially good around my waist. But other than that, I think it is just continuing to make the dynasty the most talked about thing possibly in pro wrestling. Consumers are ranting and raving about the dynasty, wanting it in other promotions. They can't have it in other promotions. It's in MLW. Tune in every single week and you can see us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's definitely something that I can see happening, and I think a lot of people would hop on board making that into something that is must see, must talk about as well. Now, in doing a little bit of research on you, fan of The Office, correct?
Huge. Absolutely.
Huge fan of The Office. So a little non-wrestling question, but I have to ask, who is your favorite character from that amazing television show?
Well, whenever I'm asked this question, I automatically disregard Michael Scott because he's up and away by far the funniest.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a cop-out answer. If I had to give who I think is really underrated on the show, he's not my second favorite, but Ryan is very, very underrated in terms of his very dry humor and subtle facial expressions. I think his facial expressions might be the best. And the way he looks into the camera, he kills me every time. But in terms of just overall body of work on the show, Andy.
Yes. I'm so glad that you said that. I feel like Andy is super underappreciated, especially in the latter seasons. He's such an integral, character when Michael leaves, obviously, and he takes over as regional manager. Spoiler, if you haven't seen it, I don't know why you haven't, but you should.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, shame on you. You deserve to have it.
Shame on you. I totally agree. I also have a really soft spot for Kevin. How do you feel about Kevin?
Well, Kevin definitely makes me laugh.
Yeah.
He's not in my top 5. I mean, the chili scene is obviously the most memorable scene for me with Kevin.
Right.
But he's okay. I'll tell you who I can do without.
Okay, tell us.
And I understand. I might catch a lot of flack for this. I'm just not a Jim guy. Jim just doesn't do anything for me. I don't think he's ever made me laugh. He's needed because the other characters play off him, but him personally, he doesn't really make me laugh.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I have an interesting relationship with Jim myself. I love him with Pam, and I like him as a foil for Dwight, but I actually like Dwight so much more than I like Jim. So I feel like people are going to be mad at me, but it's true.
Of course. And actually, another hard-hitting opinion of mine is I prefer Jim with Karen than I did with Pam.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, I loved Karen. I thought she was great.
That's interesting. I like him with Pam. I see why, but his relationship with Karen was pretty good.
Pam annoys me.
Pam annoys you, huh? Interesting.
Pam has moments where she annoys me. There's the characters they play their roles. Pam is not meant to be the funniest person on the show.
Right.
She's meant to have a soft spot. Well, I don't really have many soft spots. So for me, she does minimal. Jim does minimal. I would prefer more Ryan, more Angela, people like that. They give me a little bit more.
Oh my God, I love Angela. What a mess. She's the best. She's the most controlled mess of a person I've ever seen on TV.
Well, as a podcaster yourself, I recommend you check out The Office Girls, the podcast run by Pam and Angela.
I happily will do that. I love The Office so much. In fact, during this quarantine, I have gone back and started to rewatch it just because it's just the best. So I'm so glad to find that you were an Office fan. That was a cool little thing to find out.
For sure.
As we kind of wind down here, though, what would you give as the best piece of advice to wrestlers out there right now who are looking to kind of make a splash like you have been doing?
I think it's take a chance on yourself and find something in the market that nobody's doing and try and capitalize it on the best way that you can. I think the AirPods can be a huge testament to that. I took something that was very relevant in pop culture and I put them in my ears. It's simply all I did. And while I was having success prior to that, this, I believe, was a huge catalyst in advancing. So it's just recognizing what's out there, what's new and fresh and different, and take a gamble. If you find that you've been doing it for a little bit and you're not having the success that you might have thought you were going to have, that would be my number one advice.
Excellent. I like that advice. And before we leave, what is your favorite cup of coffee?
That's a question that deserves many different answers because there's
Indeed.
many different reasons to drink a cup of coffee. And am I limited to just coffee, or can I mix in espresso drinks? Because obviously they're very different.
As you should, of course.
The morning cup of coffee is always a black cup of coffee. Always. Hot. The mid-afternoon post-lunch coffee is always a venti iced Americano from Starbucks. Black. 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., I do lattes.
Very nice.
If I go to a new coffee shop, it's a cortado. If you don't serve cortados, I leave because I know that you are not a true good coffee shop.
So that's how you rate the coffee shops. If they don't serve it, you're out.
I specifically remember walking into a coffee shop. I will not name them because I don't want them to go out of business, especially during this time.
Yes.
I walked in. I read the menu. It was very basic. Coffee, French drip, latte, cappuccino, Americano. No cortado. Showed me that they have very little barista experience because I believe that the cortado is probably the most difficult drink to actually present. And I'm fascinated by cortados and the presentation of them. So if you don't do them, I instantly leave. But that is kind of my coffee pyramid or my coffee timeline, if you will, of how I operate.
Well, where do you go to get the best cortado?
Well, the best cortados that I've had throughout my journey. So one of the cool things about wrestling is that it allows me to go to different coffee shops throughout the country. I would say Good Boy Bob Coffee in Los Angeles was one of the best I've ever had. I would say in the New England region, there is a nice coffee shop called the Nitro Bar in Providence.
Yes.
The Coffee Peddler in New Haven is fantastic and probably my favorite in New Haven. Fussy Coffee in New Haven is great. There's so many good ones.
There are a lot of good ones. We're kind of spoiled like that.
Ox in Philadelphia is tremendous. I just had a really, really good one at Portal Coffee in San Diego. I just had that last week. So there's so many different good ones, and that's the cool thing about wrestling is traveling to all these different places and testing them out and taking pictures of them. Yeah,
that's the best. I love a good cup of coffee, and if you can't make one, I don't want to talk to you. So I feel like we're on the same page with that.
Exactly.
And, if you would please let the people know where they can find you on all your social media so they can stay in touch with you, watch what you're doing during this crazy time, and obviously follow your journey through wrestling.
Yeah, consumers, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Most Marketable. Kept the handle nice and easy for you so you can reach me on both. My pro wrestling tee store is active. Just search Richard Holliday, 2 L's in Holliday. Please don't disrespect my last name. And that is it. Listen to me on this podcast whenever this drops. I don't know when it is going to, but when
tomorrow,
it does,
yes.
It's going to drop tomorrow. And understand this, consumers. I need you to understand this. I'm going to do a close for you without you even asking me because I really appreciated this conversation. Understand
Good, thank you.
that when you are listening to the Queen of New England podcast, you're breathing rarefied air.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. That was a beautiful close.
Hey, you're welcome for that.
I will say thank you and humbly accept that. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. So everybody, go follow The Most Marketable Man. I will link all of his important information in the description. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day and be kind to one another.